Hi, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to USJI and Embassy of Japan co-hosted event, E-Aging as a new US-Japan partnership issue. My name is Go Kobayashi. I'm manager of US-Japan Research Institute. Well, in this afternoon we are very happy to introduce a new topic that is quite important for both countries. And before we're going to start this event, I'd like to say very briefly about organization. The USJI, US-Japan Research Institute, was established in Washington, D.C. 2009 with a cooperation of 5 Japanese prominent universities, and then currently 9 Japanese universities are participating in our activities. In collaboration with the institutions in the United States, we engage in practical research and formulate policy recommendations that contribute to training of young researchers and expanding of intellectual network between Japan and the US, and also tackling against global common agendas. We will start also USJI week from February 22nd here in DC. So if you're interested in our activities, please visit our website. And finally, really, we'd like to say a special thanks to the Embassy for all the support they provided us for this event, especially Minister Yamanouchi and then Mr. Yoshida. Thank you very much indeed. And also, I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Daniel Bob and then Mr. Matthew Goodman to kindly cooperate to our event today. And of course, obviously, special thanks to Professor Obi and then Dr. Iwasaki to come to DC from actually Japan, or actually today from New York after UN conference. And finally, a very short notice that this event is on the record, and we will this videotape go to record, and then we'll upload to our webpage later on. Thank you very much, and then may I ask Minister Yamanouchi for your remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kobayashi-san and the USJI, and thank you very much, Dan and Matt, and thank you so much for Professor Obi and Professor Iwasaki. And from the Japanese Embassy's point of view, this particular event is so significant. 2 reasons. One is given the instability and unpredictability of the international relations, and the US-Japan alliance and working relation is so critical for us, for Japan, and for the entire peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region. So any kind of cooperation between our 2 countries is so critical for the embassy's point of view, but particularly this kind of new frontier of the cooperation. It's quite natural to talk about TPP, or security cooperation. But this is a new challenge, a new area of the E-Aging partnership between US and Japan. This is fascinating. And that is the one reason. The second reason is, as all those audiences here today, it knows the Abenomics, the 3 arrows, very famous one. And recently, Prime Minister Abe launched the second stage of the Abenomics. And if you see this aging society, the kind of background of the whole challenges of the Japanese society, aging society, and not just analyzing the aging society, but seeing the opportunity from the aging society is a great thing. So in those 2 particular reasons, today's event is so significant, and I really wish this event will bring us to a new stage of the US-Japan cooperation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you, Kenichi, and thank you, Go, for inviting me here. This really is an interesting topic. Demography generally and the aging population in Japan is really a critical topic for Japan's future, and it's something that is going to be a critical topic for many other countries around the world, including the United States, but we're not, our demographic changes are not happening quite as rapidly as Japan. According to, I did a little bit of research with with the various low birth rates Japan has been experiencing over the past couple decades, the population of Japan is expected to fall from about 127 million today to about 92 million over the next 40 years. And of course, the percentage of elderly within that population is going to be really unprecedented. And as Kanji noted, Shinzo Abe has made the demographics an issue in his third set of arrows that he's launched, calling for a target of 1.8 children per women as one of the three arrows. And actually, total fertility in Japan has been up somewhat from 1.26 children per woman in 2005 to 1.42 in 2014. But that apparently reflects mainly something called the tempo effect rather than deeper social change. Tempo effect simply means that people get married later and they have children later in life, and so that creates a period where the birth rate is unusually low, but it recovers when couples eventually have children. So that tempo effect means that even though Japan's annual birth rate is increasing, barring larger social changes, it's really not going to have much of a chance to rise to the 2.1 level children per woman that's needed to stabilize the population. And of course, the number of workers supporting retirees is going to plummet as well. And actually, in fact, even if the birth rate were to rise tomorrow to 2.1 children per woman, Japan's population would still fall by more than 40% because of the low birth rates in the past. At any rate, the twin phenomena of declining and aging populations really does confront Japan with some very serious challenges. But fortunately, we have some really great experts here to talk about these issues. Our first speaker will be Dr. Toshio Obi, who is an expert on e-governance and e-aging. And he's a professor at Waseda and is currently with the Graduate School of Asia and Pacific Studies, as well as director of the Institute of E-Government at Waseda. But he's also worked previously at UNDP. He's been an executive advisor to the Japanese Minister of Labor, and he's held a number of positions in the Japanese, advisory positions in the Japanese government. And right now he's involved as the deputy chair of the MIC Committee on Silver Innovation. He's co-chair of the OECD Project on Silver Economy and convener of the APEC project on ICT applications for an aging society. And he's written many books, too many to list here, but he is quite an expert in the field of e-aging. We're also joined by Dr. Naoko Iwasaki, who's also with Waseda, and her research is focused on wider applications of information technology to not only aging society, but governance, gender issues, as well as business management. She she's also a senior researcher at APEC E-Government Research Center and executive director at the International Academy of CIO and project director on Silver Business, which is supported by METI. And our final speaker is an old friend of mine, appropriately old in years, as we're about the same age, I think. But Matt Goodman is the William E. Simon Chair in the Political Economy at CSIS, and he joined CSIS back in 2012, but before then was in the White House coordinating APEC and the East Asia Summit. He was also a served as director for international economics at the National Security Council staff and helped the president prepare for both the G20 and G8 summits. So I think we really have an excellent program, and we'll get started with Professor Obi.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I can came to United States in 1968 as the first time, and as an exchange student between Japan and United States, and the U.S. government asked me to stay at Alabama, state of Alabama, the deep south. At that time, it's the very issue of the another social problems in these countries. Then, 1972, I was chair of the Japan-American Student Conference at Harvard University. And, at that time, Harvard professors really criticizing the Japanese so-called the inward lookings. Japan should have the wider role in Asia, even at the time. Then I came to UNDP, United Nations, New York, at the Columbia Universities. So my life is really working with the United States for more than 40 years, but still I love the Mount Fuji, because I was born there, in Yamanashi Prefecture. And I'm the ambassador of the Mount Fuji and wine, Koshu wines, on behalf of the prefectures. I hope you can enjoy the Mount Fuji and Koshu Yamanashi wine sometime. So let me start with the very interesting figure. Okay, so you can find the first one. Oh, this is quite fast. Sorry. 61568. Last year. This is the figure of the Japanese people living over 100 years old. Okay? I don't know whether this figure is interesting to you, but another one is 7840. Among that figures, only 7840 is a man. So Japanese societies, women is so strong in terms of the living longer. Okay? But 2050, year 2050, 700,000 Japanese living over 100 years old. That's the our age of the aging societies. So most of people living over 80, and some of them, like 1/3 of them, are living 90, and some on the minor figure, but 700,000 people, over 100 people is quite a good figures. So this is really a situation in Japan, so-called the aging societies. And what does it mean? So shortage of healthcare givers. So many aging people, very small number of the caregivers. That's really unbalancing our societies right now and in the future. So we need more professional healthcare givers and nursing people. That's really an issue in the future. So starting with these numbers, in the past, like 1970, many young people support the one aging person. Okay? But last year, only 3 persons supports the one aging people. In the future, one person must support aging persons. That's the reality in terms of the financial issues, in terms of the working peoples. This is the reality of Japan. So what we should do? That's my questions about. So So just summing up of the super aging societies, which is only Japan in the world to be defined as a super aging societies, even we have 200 countries in the world. And yesterday I gave the lecture at the United Nations conference, and peoples from developing countries, a diplomat is quite surprised to know this type of things, super aging societies. So what will happen? The labor shortage, but so many unemployed seniors, and economic disparities, rich and poor elderlies, and social impact, and heavy pressure on the social security and medical systems, especially pension systems, the very shortage of the funding. Also increase in medical and healthcare expenses. And third one is a new big public project for aging infrastructure. So human beings become aging. Infrastructure of the city or railway, road, buildings, also aging. Okay? So we have to make some paradigm shift how we can rebuild Japan in terms of the aging. Not only human being, but also social system itself. And now the long, happy life is needed. In Japan, the men living at the 83, and Daniel said, and the women 89, and this number is going up, more than 90 in the future. So New York Times said, not only for Japan, this is the climate affecting our society by silver tsunami. And this picture is the evacuators from a tsunami in northeast Japan in 2011. But population in planet is 9 billion in 2060. Among that big populations, aging population is 2.4 billion. It's about 20% of the total population in the world in 2060. And in that one is very typical new trend. Developing country has quite rapid speed of aging and catch up with the aging in developed countries. Right now, Japan is #1 in the world, 26.3% of the total aging peoples in all the populations. And for example, Singapore in ASEAN is 11.7, is one of the highest among the developing countries. I don't know whether Singapore is a developing country or not. So every country is facing with the aging populations one by one, and it's really a matter of the time difference. So what we need is silver employment. 1 billion jobs needed for the active senior with 60 to 75-year-old in 2050 in the world. And our research at Waseda University, 80% of retired persons will seek job after retirement, and only 20% can get the job. Somebody said Japan is the country of the shortage of manpower, but the silver peoples, they cannot find a job. So we need solving the mismatching. We have plenty of the labor forces, potentially. That's the aging people and women. So what we should do? New work style with ICT is needed, like a telework, or flex time, or part-time I'm working for only 2 or 3 days a week. That's enough for aging people. And new business, new silver business, global market, 27 trillion US dollars in 2050. This figure is the single biggest figure for world consumptions. And in China, so we have a conference with China every year, and they need 10 million caregivers because they have the almost 300 million aging people in the near future. So 10 million caregivers is still a small number in China. So what we should do? And another issue is the silver democracies. Aging people is strongest and the biggest voters in Japan. And we calculated the percentage. Aging people means over 65 years old. Their population ratio is the 27%. But their number of the constituencies, the right for vote, is almost 40%. Because we just changed to 20 to 18 years old for voting right. And our real voter, 56% of the real voter is aging people in Japan. Okay, so number of the populations of aging is only 27. So in this country may be different, but Japan is a country with the silver democracy in the future. And as a policy advisor to ruling party LDP for 30 years, I'm telling each prime minister, this figure is very important for LDP for elections. That's why the government is paying quite a lot of the attention to insurance or some subsidy to aging people. And the very recent extra budget of the Japan government, LDP decided to provide the 30,000 yen for aging people. I don't know why, and I cannot get because I'm not poor yet. But the poor aging can get the 30,000 yen simply because of the elections in July. So silver democracy is, we have to very keen to watch. And digital inclusion is another one. Over 70 years old, they have a real problem with the digital divide. They don't know how to operate the personal computers because they didn't learn anything in the young age. But they have to be involved. Also privacy protections. The reason why the Japanese my numbers and the former one, the green card issues, is not well implemented because aging people doesn't like to protect the privacies. And I'm the chairman of the e-government promotion council of Japan, and we are asking the aging people to use e-government, like my number. They said no, simply because the privacy protection is not enough for them. So we need for them to tell the e-government things. It's very highly protected by a firewall of the broadband system. And the third issue is the urban silver. You know, In the past, like 1950s, only 30% of the Japanese population living in the urban area, the city areas. Now, 70% living in city areas. In the future, almost 85% of Japanese people living in urban area. So that's the urban silver. Okay? And we need smart silver cities. Aging people, including me, have real problems on the living in city areas. Quite different from rural areas, as I'm saying. So how we can get a happy quality of life? That's the issue we are now searching for. So what we can do? Urban inclusive programs. Quite a number of the urban poor is coming out, and high cost of living in Tokyo, for example, unemployed as a mismatched older persons. They don't have enough job and finance. Okay, and includes a wider income and digital gap in urban seniors or silvers, and lack of communications among the neighbors and stay alone at home. These things, we need more community inclusive programs and inconvenient aging infrastructures, and old and risky road and the building railway need residence communities. If you stay in Tokyo, you have to walk up to ladder to the platform of the stations, not by escalator or elevator, because they don't have this kind of things. No. So we need new infrastructure. Then it's quite a good news, e-mobility revolutions. In the future, we have automated, connected car with ITS, intelligent transport systems, and we don't need the driving skills. It's automated. Yes. Also, senior can visit anywhere, anytime they want to go, because at this moment, senior people abandon driving. But in the future, they can enjoy the mobilities. So we really expect the success of these stories, and I hope the Toyota can do very soon. And healthy and happy aging well, but government bankruptcy is an issue in the future by medical pension expenses. This is a picture of the hospitals. And the Japanese government very recently decided not to go to big hospitals. First, they have to go to a clinic and a small hospital and check the counseling by medical doctors. And medical doctor decided this patient is very serious. Then they ask the patient to go to big hospitals. Otherwise, everybody coming to a big hospital like this. Some is only a very light disease, a cough or something. Some is the very, very serious, heavy disease. So hospital is the really a part of the some gathering of the aging people, simply because of the only 10% of the expense can be paid by patient in Japan. Very cheap. So easy to go. So we have to change. So I talked about several things, but what we need is all comprehensive grand design for aging new societies. What we need, like e-participation, e-government, smart homes, and security system, disaster agriculture, pension, finance, and jobs, and the transportation, education, so on. So nobody can think about the grand design of the new aging societies, not only in Japan, but any countries. But we need, otherwise we have the lack of the funding or lack of the manpower. So that's the issue. And regarding the ICT application, we have many applications. Home electrics like robotics and healthcare and life innovation. Aging people help aging people for learning the personal computer, for example. These things. Okay, so we have a lot of the system and the new product or many activities. And as I said, silver industries will grow at 27 trillion US dollar by 2050. And this is really burgeoning market. And just very quickly to show the our international corporations at Waseda universities and some other updated organizations like OECD, APEC. Waseda has the big conference before to invite 400 experts all over the world talk about the aging issues. And APEC, as my chairmanship, we have the 4 different workshops on e-aging, and this is one of them in Singapore 2 years ago. And APEC project, we have the United States as a member, and Russia and China, and we are working on the how we can solve the issues. And the European Union's, Waseda has the policy forum on silver ICT, and this is one of them in Brussels. We have the expert going there, talk with the European expert on the issue on the aging societies. And in China is more serious in the future than Japan. How serious? They have the this year for 25 million, 250 million, sorry, aging people is living in China. And they asked the Wasedas to solve the solutions. And we have 3 conferences in China already by Waseda universities. And what they want to know is the Japanese system of the pensions, Japanese system of the national insurance scheme, or assisting health program, so on. So we are working with them, because if we cannot support, China is bankrupt because of the huge populations of the aging people. That's a disaster in the world. So we have to support them to become more stable on the this type of the issues in the future. So last one is the solution for issues. What we should do is aging infrastructure with global standard. Also digital technology innovations as solution models. And training for new job. And we need more expert on the aging system or business. And mutual assistance for independent living with the neighbors. It's a kind of the new communities in urban areas. And new working style with telework and the flex time. Building age-friendly smart cities. We have some smart cities designated by Japanese government, like Kitakyushu City and Yokohama cities, but it's very small numbers here. And we need more increase of the employment for seniors. And we have the big risk in 2030 to 2060 in global context. That is not only Japanese typical issue, it's an issue all over the world in that period. So skyrocketing aging populations up to 2.4 billions. And political uncertainties in China and India by aging problems. Establishing support framework, setting up the global grand design on standardizations. And yesterday I asked the United Nations to organize the need of the World Summit of Aging Societies. And I hope the United States will join. And of course the Japanese government is quite interested on that. So these are some issues between Japan and the United States as the new corporations. And, so my partner, the Professor Iwasaki, has some kind of the different dimension of the aging societies. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Naoko Iwasaki, Associate Professor of Waseda University. So, thank you very much for giving me a great opportunity to make a presentation on the role of women in information societies. And so this is the second time for me to come here. So today also I hope to have a fruitful discussion with you. Okay, I'd like to start my presentation. So, current situation in Japan, the aging population is in over the 25% in 2015, and so it will be 40% in 2050s. So Japan is a global frontrunner on the super aging societies, and so now in Japan there are very high aging populations. So Japan is this problem will become one of the most serious economic issues, not only in Japan but also worldwide. So the issue of aging society will be post-environmental issues. So we suffer from triple difficulties. And Japan is the only country which faces a decrease in the populations and a low birth rate and super aging societies. And so the role of women will be required for taking care of children and nursing the parents and so on. So in my case, in my house, I have a grandmother. She is 92 years old. She's not active, but fine. And also I have a child. So now in Japan, the fourth generation is increasing. So big instead. So next slide is the population prediction for Japan at 2011 to 2060s. So you can see the number of the female is growing and aging population. So the average life and expectancies, Professor Obi has already explained about that. But the male is 80.2, a little bit the old data, and the female is 80, now is 89. And but in the year 2060s, the average life expectancy and all females will be 90.9. So according to this is the latest WHO data published in 2013, life expectancy in Japan. So however, the aging women need to live alone for almost 10 years. So how can survive? So we need to solve these issues. So our goal is to find the best ways to increase women's employment by using ICT innovations and to create new information societies to increase active participation of young and senior women and aging societies, and to establish a standard model to contribute to economic growth with an increase in employment in the future. So we need to analyze the power of young women as a driver for economic growth from the aspects of both security and poverty issues, and to create a healthy and happy life for senior women. So this is the previous research and fact analysis of improving the women's employment rate. And so the last one is very important. If the difference between the men and the women's employment rates in Japan is reduced by 50%, and the GDP growth rate and will increase by 0.5% annually. So new employment will be required in order to reach these figures. So that is an equivalent and economic growth is required to match the number of employers. And now Abenomics focus on this issue. So this is the current situation under the Abenomics. So to realize Japan where women can shine, so combine concrete actions by the middle of 2040s and take this action boldly. For example, encouraging the companies to increase appointments of the women to executive and managerial positions, and creating a work and place society in which people can balance between a wealthy life and a career, and developing a social infrastructure to support women's active participations, and the prime ministers and initiatives to promote the national-wide movement and so on. And the factors that make a work-life balance difficult. So almost women cannot continue to work in Japan. So what is the factors? So inconvenient working hours and lack of workplace atmosphere and insufficient physical strength. So what are some solutions that can increase the employment of women? So ICT innovation by such as AI, artificial intelligence, or IoT, or robotics, or big data, we can change the work style. And so this is the jobs that which can be supported by ICT innovations. For example, in 2050s and dynamism imaging advertisement, and in 2025 and homework and nursing care and communication system supported by ICT innovations. So ICT innovation can promote the social participation of women as well. And for example, work at home and telework, this is Professor Obi also mentioned about that. And many employers have discovered the benefits of allowing employees to work at home through telework programs. And telework has allowed employers to attract and retain valuable workers. And the important role of telework is to expand employment opportunities for not only older persons, but also people with disabilities and also women. And to ensure that older adults can adapt to new workplace and technologies, and employers must provide them with access to returning programs and incentives to invest in learning new skills and abilities. But we need to concern about the universal design because aging people, it's difficult for them to use the great technologies. So we need to think about the universal design or usabilities and accessibilities and affordability as well. And conclusions, the most important women and ICT agenda for aging societies to recognize the balance and the quality of work and foster careers for young women for economic growth, and to clarify the most required talent for women, and to ensure that older adults can adapt to new workplace and technologies. Employers must provide them with access to retirement programs and incentives to invest in learning new skills and abilities, and to provide sufficient education for young women and re-education for senior women. And also, I think it's needed to give an education and e-literacy as well. And finally, I'd like to mention about the recommendations to carry out the joint Japan and the US research on these issues, women and effective ICT innovation in aging societies, and also to hold a US-Japan workshop on the women and ICT in the aging society to share the knowledge and prepare for the policy and planning. So thank you very much.
From there? Does it reach?
Okay, well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Obi-sensei and Yosaki-sensei, and thank you, Kobayashi-san, for inviting me today. I have a big disadvantage because I'm not an expert in e-aging, unlike the two other speakers. But this is a very personal issue to me, and from a personal perspective, I have some experience. My father is 99 years old. My mother is 90 years old, and they still live in the house that I grew up in, about 2 miles from here in Washington, D.C. And e-aging solutions are absolutely critical to their life and ability to remain in that house. Whether I think about the house itself and the way it has technology embedded, whether it's monitors to keep track of them, monitors they wear and monitors in the rooms that then alert various people if there are problems, whether it's my father's pacemaker, which can be monitored remotely. My mother doesn't see very well, so she uses an iPod to listen to news and other information. They shop online, and the food is delivered to their house. If they need to go somewhere, they order an Uber car because they don't drive anymore. So that uses e-technology. When my siblings, I have 2 sisters and a brother who don't live in Washington, and we are constantly talking to each other by internet or doing research on new solutions or new medications or other things. And that's absolutely critical to their ability to continue to live the lifestyle that they have chosen. The latest thing, if anyone has any solutions here, I would welcome input, is that despite all the monitors, we're struggling with my parents tending to get up from a chair and falling. And so we have caregivers in the house, but they're sometimes not in the same room. And so we need some kind of sensor or monitor that's on the chair so that it can send out an alert when they're stand up from the chair so the caregiver can come. So if someone has a solution to that, we're still looking for a good solution. Anyway, the point is, I get this. I mean, this makes total sense to me that increasingly many of us, I'm sure other people in this room, have elderly parents and children at home. By the way, I also have a child still at home. We want our parents to live happy and healthy and productive lives. Until a couple of years ago, my father was continuing to work online to support an investment group for his university. 70 years ago he went to university, and 80 years ago almost, I forgot. And he was continuing to do that. So I also understand the point about continuing to give elderly people productive opportunities, work opportunities. So this all makes sense to me, and I think it's a very important topic, and I'm glad that there are people focusing specifically, like Professors Obi and Iwasaki, on this topic. I won't repeat all the things they said, and so I just would underscore the premise of the conversation in Japan, because clearly this challenge of demographics generally in Japan is a catastrophic problem for Japan. given the statistics that have already been cited. And so that's absolutely clear. It's a critical issue for Japan. And it particularly has, as an economist, I look at the economic impact in particular, and Professor Obi referred to some of these problems, but it has an impact on Japan's growth, productivity, deflation. It can promote, for reasons we could talk about if you want. The fiscal burden is enormous. It can affect business investment. There are many economic impacts, most of them not good, although some, as Professor Obi indicated, there are potential business opportunities that come with it, of course. So that's a particularly interesting dimension of this conversation. One myth that isn't directly related to this issue, but just in the context of thinking about Japanese growth, given these demographic trends, that I sometimes, the last couple of times I've been to Japan, friends of mine, Japanese economist friends, and former government officials who I talk to, have talked about this is not quite as serious a problem as I think it is. So for example, there's a sort of myth going around that Japan doesn't really need growth, because if the population is declining, if you get zero growth, and let's say, just to make the math easy, a 1% drop in population, then each person remaining is wealthier, right? Because you still have, you have fewer people sharing the same amount of wealth. That doesn't strike me as a very productive way of thinking about Japan's future. It's quite a dim future. I mean, I imagine in the final analysis of that analysis that there is, I think of the Hobbit movies and Smaug the dragon sitting on a big pile of gold. Eventually, by that analysis, there will be one Japanese left and a big pile of money that they'll be sitting on. And that doesn't sound like a very happy Japan to me. So, and meanwhile, you won't even get there because the debt burden and the fiscal burden of that has to be paid off will prevent that future. So, I think clearly Japan needs growth, and any organism needs growth. A country needs growth, and so the solutions that are being talked about here that promote growth in the face of these demographic challenges, I think, are particularly important. I thought some of these solutions talked about here, and I'd like to hear more in the discussion about some of the specific solutions along the lines of the ones I talked about. I think Professor Iwasaki's discussion of women's role is very important. Labor participation by women is now actually higher in Japan than it is in the United States, though lower than the G7 average. But a lot of the work of women in Japan is not very productive, frankly. So there is an opportunity to increase the productivity of women in the workplace. But that's a function of addressing the work-life balance and other issues and mindset issues that she described in her presentation. So I think those are very important. One other solution, which was not really discussed up here, but I think is part of the answer. It's not an E solution, but it's an important solution, I think, to this problem for Japan, is immigration. And let me just make clear, I don't think massive immigration on a scale that would actually bend the arc of Japan's population trends is realistic for Japan. It's not realistic for Japan. The thought of absorbing millions of new immigrants is just, for a lot of reasons, geographically, socially, economically, inconceivable. However, targeted immigration strikes me as something that has more power and more realism for Japan. Actually, I was, a number of years ago, 15 years ago or something, I was at a dinner in Japan, hosted by, I think, the U.S. Embassy. It was a small dinner, and there was a professor there, and I wish I could remember who it was, because it wasn't one of these two professors, but who had a very interesting idea, which was that every year, I think the Monbusho, or the Education Ministry, oversees a test of the Japanese language globally. If you want to take a proficiency test in Japanese, then you can take a test in various places around the world at a certain time. And apparently, roughly, as I remember the numbers, about 500,000 people at that time took the test every year. I think that's the right number, something like that. 500,000 people take this test every year around the world, and about 10% of them pass. That's what I recall. So that's about 50,000 people. And this professor's idea was that when the Monbusho sends the certificate to the passing candidates, they should include in the envelope a green card. Because if you are smart, determined, and capable enough to learn the Japanese language well enough to pass that test, then you would be a good citizen and resident of Japan, and you should be allowed to come in without any more questions asked. And I thought that was a very creative idea. 50,000 people is about 0.5% of the Japanese population, so it would be a minimal impact. Recently, the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, on a similar line, the Crown Prince and Princess were in the Philippines, and they visited some Filipino nurses, and that got me thinking, again, tomorrow, Japan should let 10,000 of those nurses into Japan, waive the language requirement, waive the nursing qualification requirement, just accept the Philippines one. 10,000 people, again, 0.01% of the Japanese population, would have no impact socially in Japan, but it would give you a threefold impact. Number one, they would take care of old people. Number two, they would take care of children, which enables women to work more. And number three, they would have babies themselves, because immigrants tend to have higher fertility rates. So it would have a three-prong effect. So I think that kind of solution should also be part of the answer for Japan. Not mass immigration, but targeted immigration. Anyway, finally, just final point, I think U.S.-Japan cooperation is a great idea in this area. Minister Yamanouchi at the beginning said that the U.S.-Japan relationship is much broader and deeper than TPP. We're talking a lot about TPP these days, or even the alliance dimensions. There are a lot of interesting things, and we've done programs at CSAS, and I think Dan has at Sasakawa, about other aspects of U.S.-Japan cooperation. This is one that I think has a lot of potential, because the U.S., of course, on a different scale and different pace, faces some of the same challenges. And I'm encouraged to hear that the APEC is working on this. The U.S. and Japan actually do have a history of talking about aging together. I looked this up, and in 1993, at the beginning of the Clinton administration, there was a joint commission on aging that was launched. Now, that was mostly, I think, focused on diseases as opposed to healthcare related issues only, but not to these broader questions, including economic. But I think reviving something like that bilaterally would be a great idea, and there's a lot of synergy and complementarity in what the U.S. and Japan are able to bring to the table in terms of technological solutions, but also broader healthcare and life care and other solutions. So I think this is a great area for U.S.-Japan cooperation. So with that, thank you again to the presenters, and I look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Obi-sensei and Murasaki-sensei. Really a lot of interesting threads to talk about in our discussion. We have about a half hour left, and I was just checking the weather. None of you, I don't think any of you have to worry about the snow coming anytime soon. It's supposed to be warm enough that if it rains, it's just going to be rain. I wanted to pick up initially on a couple of the things that Matt mentioned. On that language proficiency idea, we at Sasakawa have a U.S.-Japan economic dialogue, which we just held last month with the Peterson Institute for International Economics and senior economists from Japan. It was Chatham House rules, but it may have very well been the exact same economics professor that mentioned this, but he talked precisely about the same thing. If I remember the numbers correctly, Japan is losing about 600,000 people in the working age population each year. It's about 60,000 who pass at the highest level, and again, he said that Japan should be given these a green card, essentially. Of course, not all 60,000 would accept it, but it is a beginning. But that gets to sort of the fundamental question about changing mindsets when it comes to immigration. I wonder if we can have our two speakers talk about that, whether there really is any potential for greater social acceptance of immigrants, if not now, in the future, as Japan's aging population continues, and also specifically on women in the workforce. I think clearly information technology can have some significant impacts on this, but there too, it seems to me that there's social change that is actually required that's quite significant. And I wonder, as Matt mentioned, the labor participation of women is already higher than here, but it's when it comes to the productivity of women, and there's productivity questions beyond that, but are we perhaps on the cusp of some social change or greater acceptance of women in higher areas of the workforce where they can be more productive? So, question about the social aspects of both immigration and of women. So if I could get your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Daniel. It's quite important issues on the population's decrease. And we have factors which we can solve. Of course, one is the immigrant from overseas. Second is the women's power. Third one is the so-called aging, which we are talking about. And the fourth is the robot. Robot can work for us with the AI. And regarding immigrant, yeah, I agree to some point. And what we should do for immigrant, as a professor of the universities, we have so many foreign students, especially Waseda University, #1 university for inviting foreign students. And now the almost 8,000 students at Waseda from overseas, more than 40 countries. 60% of them want to stay in Japan after graduation to get a job. The reality is quite different. Maybe 1/3 of them can get a job after Waseda degree. So if government and the private sector like Keidanren can promote the employment of the foreign student graduate, so-called I don't say immigrant. That's the good student can stay in Japan with green card. That's more pragmatic. And we need about 1 million professionals in Japan, which we are really facing with a shortage. One is the nurse. Second is the caregivers. Third one, the expert on the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence or big data analyst. So we should have really good open policy for them. Really we need, otherwise we cannot maintain our international competitiveness in that sector. So Japanese government and private sector should think about it. 1 million foreigners as a professional people working in Japan is the mandatory for our fostering the economic growth. Okay.
So as for the immigrant, Professor has already explained about that. And robotics or ICT innovation will help women to work in the societies. And in Japan, we have a lot of ICT applications to help the women. And so if possible, we have the time, and researcher Jim has the presentation on the ICT application in Japan. Could you kindly explain about that? Yes. Yes.
He's my researcher from Waseda University, Tokyo, Americans.
Thank you. So I don't have the slideshow with me right now. I'm ready to go, but basically the idea is robots are being developed by companies all over the world. Japan has invested about $400 million in developing self-driving cars, robotics, drone technology. That's probably further down the pipeline, but miniature drones. There's a French project called Romeo, which is basically a robot that does all the things that normal robots do, but it also is designed to detect emotional cues. So it can detect both verbal and nonverbal cues and kind of become friendly with the patient so that it doesn't feel like an impersonal robotic device, it feels more like a companion. And on the lower end of things, there's also Hasbro is developing virtual pets, and there's a lot of possibility for growth in this industry. So I encourage you to look at some of the videos of these. The technology is quite impressive, both coming out of Japan, Europe, and the United States.
Well, thank you. We have just 20 minutes more, but just if I could ask one more question about caregivers. This is quite anecdotal, but my understanding is when caregivers do come into Japan from other countries, they are typically there only for a short period of time, and then have to return and to other countries. So, and it's very difficult to get Japanese workers in that area. Are there ways that Japanese workers could be persuaded to enter the caregiving field? Would any information technology applications have any particular effect on that, or are there particularly, is this something that Japanese workers are not going to be interested in?
We have made some research on the Filipinos caregivers who are in the United States and Europe and some other Asian countries, and whether they are interested in Japanese market. And we made some questionnaires for 200 professionals in the Philippines, and one big issue is the language. They speak very good English, so they can go to the United States very easily. But in Japan, we need the caregiver who speak good Japanese, because aging people, most of them cannot speak English well. So that's the one thing, and just we asked the Japanese government to offer the e-learning system from Tokyo to Manila. Okay, they don't need to come to Japan before, just they can learn in Philippines on the Japanese language. And second one is the really how many years they want to work, okay? Because Japanese government only issues the 3-4 years only. But they want to work more than 10 years. It's possible in Japan as the professionals. So we need the really extending the visa for them. So we have the Japan-Philippine Economic EPA, and should be including the so-called the professional labor agreement for more open activities in Japan and the Philippines. So that's we are now asking our government to do as soon as possible. And regarding the Japanese domestic side, as I said, we have the real shortage of the caregivers. The last figure is the 300,000. So no doubt, who can reject? Because we have shortage of the caregivers in the quite a big amount of the expertise. So it's really a matter of the political decision making to persuade the Japanese, what calls the regulations. Deregulation is really needed on that. And not only Philippines, even Indonesia or China, or I don't know, the United States, but it should be open to all over the world who have the really good expertise on caregivers for aging societies. That's my very strong will to work with government on that project.
Yeah.
I have the same opinions as Professor Obi, but I was thinking that caregivers need to pass at a very high level on examinations and evaluation. So we need to solve these issues as well.
And if I may, just one last question. There's a general perception here in the U.S. that Japan is not as strong in software development as it is in hardware development. And to the extent that software will be a major component of any new technologies that are coming in and very directly involved in e-aging, is that a misperception? Are there new developments that are spurring on greater software development, particularly in this area, or is that perception generally held here fairly accurate?
Yeah, you are right. The software part of the aging business, we are really behind the time and the power of the US companies like Google and Apple's and Intel's and GE's. Yeah, they have more good consumer-oriented activities for R&D. So one of the Japanese weakness of the technology innovation is Japanese company or government-oriented research center as well as universities. We have very excellent experts on R&D on technologies, especially in basic science. Okay? But we have shortage of the service innovations. We have very excellent R&D and inventions on. We cannot such kind of the hardware or software into a service innovations for selling something in the market. That's the United States is quite excellent countries because you have the technology and innovations and service innovation as well. So what we need is the joint venture between US and Japan on this hard-soft combinations of the innovation system. Otherwise, most of Japanese company will build the research center, R&D center in Silicon Valley because they can get the excellent expert engineers or scientists in Silicon Valley, not in Tokyo. So what we should do in Japan, we should pay more attention to service innovations in companies or universities. That's my answer.
Yes, as for the service innovations, and as I mentioned about the 3 points in my other presentations, that is usabilities and accessibilities and affordabilities. So in order to solve these points and aging people cannot use an ICTs tools for innovations. So that is in English.
Okay, well, let's open it up to the audience. We don't have much time, but I guess if you'll want this on people to use the microphone. Oh, okay, we don't need the microphone. So yes, right here. And if you could identify yourself.
Yeah, Yuki Mamura from Washington State. Omi Sensei and the USI system, good friend of mine for a long time. Welcome back to DC. We have been talking about a lot about the cost of aging society. A lot, everywhere. But we have to look at more on the benefit side of the aging society. I'm a kind of candidate for already in full-time, membership of the aging society. But we really have to look at what kind of business could be developed, particularly entrepreneurial and innovation. And when you retire at 65 years old, a lot of people are so wealthy and active. How could you encourage them to do more economic activities? So that means we have to encourage more entrepreneurial business, which could use their experience, knowledge, and networking. And my question here is to both of you, is that what kind of Japanese national policy are for encouraging those senior population to start their own business? But not only national government, but what is the policies or encouragement by the so-called local government or rural areas government? Thank you.
I'll just quickly repeat the question. It's focusing more on the benefits of an aging society, right, and ways to encourage greater entrepreneurship among aging population, not only by the national government, but also the local governments.
Thank you, Mamura-san. It's quite important questions on the Japanese aging societies. And, we need so-called the silver venture. Venture often is defined as the young people is created for some new innovations, but silver can do the same thing. They are more trained and well educated, and after graduation, and they're working for 35 or 40 years in the company or government or whatever. And after retirement, they are free until 100 years old in the future. What they can do? They can establish the entrepreneurship issues like small, medium enterprise, SME, or you can call the venture, silver venture. And government, especially local government, can support them because it's really a good income of the business, which really promotes the development, regional or community issues. So in the futures, in local government, might have the new development program for senior people to encourage them to be entrepreneurship. Otherwise, local government is losing the big revenue from the people because everybody is aging. So the point is active senior is the almost 80% of the total aging people in Japan between 65 to 75 years old. So 80% can work very well. And they need some incentive by local government or business circles as the community leader. That's one of the very pragmatic solution in Japan. And we can work with the United States because the US has very good sense of the venture business. We can learn or make some joint ventures to ASEAN or APEC regions to work on.
Thank you very much and good questions. I like to introduce one case study in Japan. Mitaka cities, as you know, Mitaka cities. It's one city in Tokyo. And Mitaka cities, the municipalities opened the ICT schools for the retirement ages, like the older persons, to achieve the ICT skills or technical points. And after achieving the ICT skills, the senior people can open or can start the venture business. Yeah, so this is the one case study in Japan. And so many seniors could start the venture business in the local area.
I think that part of the answer to this is tied up in broader questions of making it easier to be an entrepreneur in Japan. Japan typically has rated pretty poorly in the World Bank rankings of doing business, and starting and closing businesses is more difficult in Japan. And so I think those general barriers in terms of excessive regulation and so forth, I think need to be addressed to help with the possibility of elder or senior entrepreneurs. So that's my sort of broad answer. One specific idea inspired by the Japanese word for teacher, which means born before, is that old people could make really good teachers. And if there's a way to maybe promote I don't know whether this already exists in some form in Japan, but some kind of Peace Corps, elder Peace Corps, for elder people in Japan to teach younger people. I think that would be a great use of Japanese. By the way, in Japan and outside Japan, that might be an idea that is worth thinking about, where government could actually play a specific role. So.
Other questions?
My name is Kikuchi, and after I retired from the World Bank in 2000, I've been looking at population monthly figures every month till today. So this topic is very important. But just one question to Professor Obi and one question to Professor Iwasaki. You mentioned, and both of you mentioned, very large age disparity, the longevity disparity between male and female Japanese. And I think it's a serious question. When both men and women living in the same country, available on living in the same situation, and why should there be an 8-year, 7-8 year lifespan difference? And my suspicion is that it's in the way men abuse themselves. It's not that the women are stronger. It's the men who don't take care of themselves. And because of this, healthcare costs are much higher. And I think we should pay a lot more serious examination of how to change the lifestyles of men to fit more like women's lifestyle, so they don't have to live 14 years by themselves. That's one point. The other question with Professor Iwasaki is, lately I go to Japan a lot and find that these izakaya, like many of them are closing because they don't have enough workers. At the same time, you go to Akihabara, and there's all this fad about Akiba 48, and then there's Nogizaka 48, there's Hakata 48, and there's a whole group of this industry of young women just spending their entire time on their cell phone and trying to look cute so that even if they don't talent, they can earn money on the stage. And instead of learning how to become caregivers and other things, isn't there some kind of a national will to almost suicidal? Women just become cute and that's it?
Okay, that's getting men to change their lifestyles and getting them to cute. So,
no, I can see something cute.
in addition to being cute.
Yes, good idea. How should I say? No solution. Yeah, but I think there is a little bit the differences between areas like local areas and Akihabara or the other places. So I think if the one idea will succeed, the people would gather. So it depends on the ideas in the local areas.
We should go there.
Well, we reached our closing time, but I think this is a really interesting discussion, and it does, I think, point to areas where the U.S. and Japan can actually do some cooperation. Japan is ahead of the U.S. in terms of an aging population, but we're not all that far behind. But I think some of the ideas that have been talked about here and being developed in Japan will likely have some real applications in the U.S. But please join me in thanking all three of our speakers today.